The aircraft above me is a B-24. Actually, it's a model of a B-24. This was a very early version of it. It was actually flown in the South Pacific. It had the nose art named Eager Beaver on it. It flew successfully some 77 missions and came back to the United States. Finally ended up in a boneyard up in Ontario, California. The original, this is a model of it. The B-24 was introduced, it was actually a heavy bomber, what they call a heavy bomber. It was used for bombing, land bombing, and also for submarine patrols in the Atlantic, and used as a bomber in the Pacific War. There were 18,000 of these aircraft made. It was significant because it had a different wing. It was a thinner, longer wing that they had in the B-17. It's called the Davis wing. It provided some advantages. It allowed the aircraft, the B-24, to fly further, higher, and carry a higher bomb load than a B-17 using exactly the same engines. The thing about it was it had 10 machine guns on it, 50 caliber machine guns, different crew positions. Later in the war, the E and the F model added a chin turret, allowing 2 more 50 caliber machine guns to fire from the front. This was significant because of the way, in Europe especially, the Germans that we were fighting against, the Luftwaffe, figured out the best way to attack the bombers was to attack them from the front. They would parallel the formation, turn a couple miles out and come in. A closure ratio was probably 500 miles an hour. And they would fire and then pull up or dive under. One way or another, the primary objective was to kill the people in the front of the airplane, the pilots. And one of the missions, they lost 30% of the pilots. There were variants of this made. The C-87 transport, they sealed up everything, they made it into a transport airplane. And they also made an improved version called the Privateer, the PB-4Y, the Privateer. It added a bigger single tail instead of a twin tail. They say the top speed was about 290 miles an hour. They flew a little higher, 23,000 feet, but in sub-patrols, they were actually down lower the water. And they actually sank ships. This airplane sank 3 ships, usually with machine gun fire. There was a tremendous amount of effort required in flying this airplane. Very stiff controls, very hard to trim up. The saying with the air crews was, if you want to go higher, you want to go farther, and you want to go faster and carry a heavier bomb load, you want to go in a B-24. If you want to make it home, you're going to B-17. The B-24 has a high wing. It only had 1 entry point, and if you went down in the water, you couldn't get out of it fast enough. The B-17, however, had a low wing and several places where you could come out of the aircraft, through the side windows and so forth. It would float for at least 2 or 3 minutes before it started to sink, and so you could get out of it safely in a water landing. There was a tremendous amount of these airplanes were lost over Europe. The last user of these airplanes, the last one was retired in 1968, flown by the Indian Air Force.